The auction block had seen countless species pass across its surface. Zephyrians with their crystalline exoskeletons, diminutive Keth with their multiple arms, even the rare void walkers who existed partially in another dimension. But never had the Galactic Slave Consortium seen anything quite like the creature that stood before them now. Captain Thexavor adjusted his neural implants, studying the bipedal being through his compound eyes. The human stood roughly 6 feet tall, covered in what appeared to be primitive fabric with pale skin and strange hair growing from its head. Its species had been recently discovered on a backwater planet the consortium had designated as Mining World 47B, Lot 847, announced the auctioneer, his voice echoing through the amphitheater filled with the galaxy's most wealthy and powerful beings. One adult human, species designation Terra Sapiens, recommended for heavy labor or entertainment purposes. The human's eyes, an unusual blue color, swept across the assembled crowd with what Thexvor initially mistook for fear. Only later would he realize it had been assessment. The specimen appears docile, continued the auctioneer. Initial scans show standard carbon-based physiology, though with unusually dense bone structure and redundant organ systems. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits. Thexvor raised his bidding paddle immediately. He owned 17 mining operations across 3 star systems, and was always in need of sturdy laborers. The human looked robust enough, and its primitive nature suggested it would be easily controlled. 50,000 to Captain Thexavor of the Hegemony Mining Collective, announced the auctioneer. Several other bidders joined in. Lady Vexara, known for her gladiatorial arenas, raised the bid to 75,000. Commander Zult of the Obsidian Fleet, who specialized in using slaves for dangerous military engineering, pushed it to 100,000. But Thexavor was determined. This human would work his mines. He raised his paddle again and again, driving, the price higher until at 230,000 credits the other bidders finally backed down. Sold to Captain Thexavor. The human was transferred to Thexavor's ship in neural restraints, a standard procedure for new acquisitions. The captain had purchased dozens of slaves over the years, and the process was routine. Initial conditioning, neural programming to ensure obedience, then assignment to work details. Simple. What wasn't simple was the way the human studied everything during transport. While other species typically cowered or raged against their restraints, this one observed. It watched the guards' patrol patterns, examined the ship's architecture, and seemed to catalog every detail of its surroundings. "What do you call yourself, creature?" Thexvor asked during the journey to Mining Station Gamma 7. "Marcus." The human replied in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard, "Marcus Webb. You will be designated Worker 847. Your previous identity is irrelevant." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "And what should I call you?" The question surprised Thexvor. Slaves didn't typically ask questions. "I am Captain Thexavor, your owner. You will address me as master." "I see." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me, Captain, how many slaves have successfully escaped from your facilities?" The audacity of the question left Thexavor momentarily speechless. "None, of course. Escape is impossible." "Impossible is a strong word," Marcus mused. "I've found that most things people call impossible are just things they haven't figured out how to do yet." Upon arrival at Mining Station Gamma 7, Marcus was processed like any other slave. Neural inhibitor implanted identification tattoo burned into his forearm. Assignment to Mining Shaft Delta 9, the harshest, deepest shaft on the station, where the most dangerous and backbreaking work was done. The overseer, a massive brutarian named Grok, specialized in breaking difficult slaves. He towered over Marcus by 3 feet and outweighed him by several hundred pounds. "New meat," Grok rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "You work 16-hour shifts. You mine 2 tons of ore per day minimum. You fail to meet quota, you don't eat. You cause trouble, you visit the pain chambers. Understand?" Marcus examined the mining equipment he'd been given. Crude tools barely better than what his ancestors might have used. "I understand the rules. Do you understand the consequences of those rules?" Grok backhanded Marcus across the face, a blow that would have shattered the skull of most species. Marcus rolled with the impact, came back to his feet, and smiled. There was no fear in that smile, only a cold, calculating intelligence that made Grok suddenly uncomfortable. "Interesting," Marcus said, working his jaw. "That's roughly equivalent to getting hit by a professional heavyweight boxer. Good to know." The first week proceeded according to Grok's expectations. Marcus worked his shifts, met his quotas, and seemed to adapt to slave life. But other slaves began to whisper. The human asked questions about guard rotations, supply schedules, the station's technical specifications. He treated every conversation as an intelligence-gathering operation. By the second week, Marcus had somehow acquired detailed knowledge of the station's layout, security protocols, and operational procedures. He began sharing this information with other slaves, speaking in hushed tones during rest periods. "The guard change happens every 8 hours, he explained to a group of Keth slaves. "There's a 47-second gap when Section C is unwatched. The ventilation systems connect to the main computer core. And the neural inhibitors? They're designed for species with standard brain chemistry. Human neural pathways are unique." By the third week, Marcus had done something unprecedented. He had begun to organize the slaves, not into a simple revolt, but into a coordinated resistance network. He identified leaders among different species, established communication channels, and began teaching them tactics that seemed to come from some deep well of ancestral knowledge. "Humans have been slaves before," he explained to a gathering of 24 slaves from 8 different species. "We learned how to resist, how to fight, how to win." The rebellion began on a Tuesday. It started small, a work slowdown here, equipment malfunction there. Nothing that couldn't be explained by normal operational hiccups. But within hours it had spread throughout the station like a virus. Marcus had somehow coordinated simultaneous actions across all mining levels. When Grok arrived to discipline the troublemakers, he found Marcus waiting for him. The human had removed his neural inhibitor, something that should have been physically impossible, and was holding it in his hand like a broken toy. "The thing about humans," Marcus said conversationally, "is that we're incredibly good at adapting. Our brains are plastic in ways your scientists didn't account for. We can literally rewire our neural pathways to overcome obstacles." Grok charged, his massive fists swinging. Marcus moved like liquid mercury, using the overseer's momentum against him, striking at precise points on his anatomy with knowledge that spoke of detailed study. Within minutes, the supposedly invincible Brutarian was unconscious on the ground. The rebellion spread to the other levels. Slaves who had never cooperated before worked together with military precision. Marcus had somehow taught them to function as a unit, to support each other's strengths and compensate for weaknesses. When Captain Thexvor arrived with reinforcements, he found his mining station under complete slave control. The slaves hadn't simply escaped, they had taken over. Every guard was captured, every overseer subdued, every security system compromised. Marcus stood in the station's command center, surrounded by freed slaves from a dozen different species, all looking to him with something approaching reverence. "Captain," Marcus greeted him pleasantly, "thank you for coming. We need to discuss new management arrangements." "This is impossible," Thexvor stammered. "Slaves don't rebel. The neurals, inhibitors, don't work on humans the way you expected," Marcus finished. "The thing is, Captain, my species has a saying. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. You chose to make us slaves. We chose to make ourselves free. What happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy." Marcus didn't simply free the slaves. He transformed them. Using human concepts of organization, strategy, and collective action, he forged them into something new. They didn't just escape. They began liberating other facilities. Within 6 months, the Galactic Slave Consortium had collapsed. The mere word human became synonymous with revolution, freedom, and the unbreakable will to resist oppression. Captain Thexfor found himself in the unprecedented position of kneeling before the species he had tried to enslave, begging for mercy from the creature he had bought for 230,000 credits. Marcus Webb, former slave designation worker 847, looked down at his former owner with the same calculating intelligence that had unsettled Grok months earlier. "The thing about humans," Marcus said quietly, "is that we remember. We remember kindness and we remember cruelty. We remember who stood with us and who stood against us. The choice of what we remember about you, Captain, is now entirely in your hands." And in that moment, the galaxy learned a fundamental truth that would echo through the ages. You can chain a human's body, but you cannot chain a human spirit. And when that spirit breaks free, it carries with it the power to reshape the very foundations of civilization itself.